Jonathan Shrager for StrettyNewsTV. I'm joined by Mick Clegg, who was the power development coach at Old Trafford between the years of 2000 and 2011. Actually met Mick at a Gillam Balligay presentation evening where Gillam had got Mick along to talk about his new book on biography on Ronaldo and obviously your input into Cristiano's development physically. Yeah, so first of all, how are we doing?
Fine. I've got my new job now and it's going really well. Very exciting times.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, as I sort of touched upon there, turn of the millennium, you started with United. I suppose the first obvious question would be how the role sort of came about.
Well, the role came about in this manner really. I was coaching children and youth, including my own kids, and I'd done very well in the Manchester area with weightlifting and athletics and football and stuff like that. And two of my lads were actually playing for Man United.
Yeah.
And one of my lads was a very good weightlifter. And my youngest lad had just started with weightlifting at a very young age. And they were all doing very well.
Yeah.
And while I was at United, I occasionally met Rob Swire, who asked me questions about development of Michael and Stephen. And what happened then was Brian Kidd went to Blackburn Rovers as a manager, and
Yeah.
Dave Fever went there as his physio.
Yeah.
So Rob Swire got the head job, and they subsequently moved from the Cliff to Carrington.
Yeah.
And of course they'd put a gym in, quite a big gym site at Carrington, and they needed somebody to run it. So he'd seen a lot of the work I'd done and a lot of the people that I'd trained, and they were very happy to ask me would I come down there and coach the lads, you know.
Yeah.
So I was actually, I had my own gym. I've had the gym now for 33 years. But I was also lecturing at Openshaw College at the time as well on a part-time basis. So
fantastic, yeah. So
they thought I was the right man.
Fantastic. So they approached you essentially to come in and run the new gym at the Carrington complex. And I suppose a couple of questions. I suppose the obvious question was your role. The official title was power development coach, which is quite it's not a cryptic description, but certainly did it encompass everything in terms of the strength training, nutrition, rehab and prehab? Was it a role that encompassed everything?
No, of course not. I mean, they had a dietitian, Trevor Lee, best dietitian I've ever come across. Absolutely fantastic guy. He was there over 20 years, Trevor.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've got good physios, a great physio team there, and then they've got the football-specific coaches. But then they needed somebody to, you know, give more balance to the training on the physical side. So I did a lot of work on their power development because that was my speciality.
Yeah.
You know, working in a gym, going strength, speed, power, agility, and all that sort of work. So that's the work that I did.
Fantastic. And is it? Everyone just assumes because of the magnitude of the club, you know, Manchester United, global brand, global juggernaut in a way. That United would always be at the forefront of any kind of evolution. So I suppose with the advent of the Premier League and the commercialisation of football, you started to see, in correlation with that, more professionalism within the game. And obviously as a result, clubs wanted to embrace sports science. Were United always at the forefront of embracing anything, especially within your department in terms of the physical side? Was it an avant-garde thing to do at the time for United to employ you, or are all clubs starting to do that? No,
they weren't at the time. I think United were the forefront, I don't know anymore, but certainly were at the forefront in the early 2000s. Yeah. They was looking at everything. As soon as I came on board, you know, I showed them what I could do, but I wanted to learn as much as anything because you learn so much from the top professionals.
Yeah.
The guys that I was working with, Ryan Giggs and Roy Keane and Paul Scholes, etc. You know, these guys can give you so much information. Then you need to go and research. How can I train this lad? You know, they've just won the treble. You know what I mean? So how can I have an impact on that? Without, on the other side of it, having a negative impact, because that can happen. Overtraining, we know, can cause problems. So you've got to go in there really open-minded and listen and be very aware of what they want and need. And that's what I tried to do. And of course, I was very lucky because Michael and Stephen were there.
Yeah.
They were well known in Carrington at Manchester United because they were very, very physical lads.
Yeah.
You're not the best footballers, but they could play. But physically, you know, it was very hard to match.
Yeah, and that
So,
well, I remember seeing when Michael was training at the Cliff, there was a picture of him probably in the summer with his top off and what have you, with a Ronaldo-esque figure. So presumably they were aware that you'd helped cultivate his physique.
Absolutely.
And that was obviously another factor in why they approached you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, because when I interviewed Raymond van Hounen, and we discussed a little bit off camera,
Yeah.
I found it fascinating that the first time United had ever had a full-time goalkeeping coach was Tony Coton, which was the late 90s. And obviously yourself, you came in at the turn of the
2000,
millennium as the first full-time physical training coach.
that's right.
It's amazing, but even though it seems late to us, given the magnitude of the club, United was still at the forefront in employing you.
Yeah, and of course they had Trevor Lee, the dietitian, which was massively important, you know. So and the physio team there was absolutely fabulous, fantastic set of lads.
Yeah.
So they'd set it all up, and I was just fantastic to be a part of that team, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose we'll dive right into it in terms of the impressive list of personnel that you worked alongside. I mean, obviously I've come to know you more through your work with Ronaldo now via Guillem Balaguer, and one thing that stood out to me when I recently interviewed Guillem on his biography of Ronaldo, I asked him the question, who was the most informative kind of source that you spoke to when you were learning about Cristiano and gathering your information? And he pinpointed yourself as someone that he learned a lot about Cristiano, and he was intrigued by the relationship you managed to cultivate with him. What was it that was so sort of special? I mean, we all know the player he's gone on to be, and physically what he's gone on to be as well, but what could you just explain to us the relationship with Cristiano and how you helped develop him?
Well, the relationship with him actually was the development of the relationships with players at the club.
Yeah.
Obviously, I first went in and trained with the youth team, and then I was asked to train Roy Keane. Now, you know, I'd never trained top line players, you know, somebody in, you know, like of Roy. But I was asked to train him. I was asked to help in his rehabilitation with Rob Swire. Yeah. And so I had an interview with him before I would train him to make sure I knew what he'd been doing and what he was hoping to do and what he thought of different types of training. Yeah. And he actually told me that he used to box. And of course, I had a boxing club at my gym. Right. I'd had it for 14 years. So I said, oh, fantastic, you know, so would you fancy using some boxing techniques that I've actually developed for football? He said, yeah. So we went down into the gym, when it was appropriate, of course, during his rehab, and we did some boxing training. And of course, whenever Roy's in the gym, everybody wants to be there, you know, so players were coming in and watching him, and he looked magnificent when he's boxing.
On the pads,
yeah,
sort
exactly.
Of essentially yeah. Work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we're not talking about getting in a ring and punching each other. No, exactly. So, but they could see the relevance that I was working with Roy, how that would be used in football. And so the likes of Wes Brown and Gary Neville and then Ollie Gunnar and people like that, they all had a look at it and said, oh, I want to have a go. And then I introduced the weightlifting and some strength training. And it just really built up, and I got a really good feeling in the gym. I was always in the gym. That was one of the most important things for me, and same as it is here. Yeah. I've always got my chair in the gym. Yeah. This tendency to have offices and all the rest of it is fantastic. But if you want to really learn about people, you need to be in the gym, because they don't only come during a specific training session. Yeah. They'll come and see you when they feel that they're lacking on something that they need to work on their own. Yeah. Or even sometimes, if you build up good relationships, they'll tell you about their private lives, which you've got to be very careful with.
Of course, yeah.
So obviously they knew my lads, they knew of what was going on in the family. And so I would get them, virtually all of them, coming to me on their own and talking about their own specific needs. And of course what that did, you know, Yap Stam and, you know, Andy Cole, Dwight York, just goes on, the list of players. Yeah. And then of course Cristiano comes in. So Cristiano was very easy to work with. You know, I had all this evidence, if you like, that people look for. Well, he's trained him and he's not doing so bad. Ryan Giggs with all this hamstring problems and all the rest of it. So, when Cristiano came along, I mean, obviously he was bought for a lot of money. I'd seen him at that game in Portugal and realised what a talent he was. But I don't go to other people. They've got to come to me. Yeah. And he came to me and asked me about what I could do for him And I said to him, you need to watch the players that you think are worthwhile watching and see what they've done. And he did. He looked at what everybody was doing. And then he said, well, I want that, but I want more as well, because I want to be specific for me.
Yeah.
So I started to work with him. It was very easy, because I'm a dad. I've got 5 kids. You know, I worked in schools and colleges and all the rest of it. So me getting on with people was quite easy. Yeah. And so we formed a great relationship, because you got to learn when to shut up and keep out of the way of it, or when you need to intercede and say something or try to help. Yeah. But you've got to be careful in relationships, and that's one of the skills of being a coach that isn't really worked on for people coming out of universities and colleges and all that. You know, it's a real skill and an art. Coaching to me is an art. Yeah. It's not just about knowing if you exercise and this is better than that. Yeah. That's very rarely true. Anyway, it depends where you put exercise, but it's the mental side of it. You know, emotional side of working with people that's so important to interact with. Yeah,
absolutely. So, and you mentioned several instances during your response there that I want to touch upon. First of all, Roy Keane and the boxing. Football and boxing are sort of inextricably linked in a way. You always have boxers that are big football fans, and sometimes you hear footballers who box when they were younger. Keano being an example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wayne Rooney is someone that's boxed as well. When you actually, just purely because I've seen a picture of you on the mitts with Scholesy out in the gym as well, I mean, it sounds like a daft question. Technically, who do you think actually could have been a professional boxer from the technique you saw on the pads?
Roy. Oh, he's a powerful lad, but a lot of it's there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He can really focus, and he's a powerful lad. You know.
Yeah. Could you tell when you're on the mitts?
That was one of the things I said to him, because I asked him, you know, where did you box? Have you had any actual fights? It's all right sparring and doing some training, but he said, I've had 4 and I've won the 4. And I said, well, I'll be able to see that when I start training you. So he just looked me in the eye and said, yeah, well, have a look. And you could see, if he'd have carried on boxing, he'd have probably been a very, very good boxer, I would imagine.
So sort of national title level, or you just never know, do you?
Never know.
World title level, but he could have made a professional boxer.
I think probably so, yeah.
Fantastic.
Because he just had that mentality.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Ferocious.
Fantastic, yeah. And then you touched upon Giggsy with his hamstrings. It was an issue that was a recurrent issue for him for a long time. Many years he struggled with his hamstrings. Yeah. And the popular rumour was that obviously the yoga, coupled with, I believe even at one point someone said he changed his car because the way in which he sat in his car was affecting his hamstrings. Anyway, there was obviously a couple of incidents, I should say a couple of contributing factors, but did you assist him as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can just read that in his book if you like, but I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at and listening to him, finding out what was causing him problems on the pitch, you know, the feelings that he felt. Obviously, the physios were fantastic with him, you know. I mean, they looked at all sorts of things. But I looked at the actual exercises, the physical exercises that we could do that would build his hamstrings in a powerful manner that could balance, you know, the whole of the leg and hip area, so that he wouldn't have so many problems. And I think we got it pretty well right in the end.
I was going to say, because it got to a stage where very rarely created an issue.
Exactly. And the important thing is giving a player longevity. I mean, players can get to a certain level, but they can quickly deteriorate if things aren't kept up. And that does happen, sadly. You know, me seeing this over the years. But Ryan has kept on and on and on with his training. I think Cristiano will as well. And that's the key. You know, sometimes I think players get to a certain level, they think, oh, I've done it now and I don't need to do that now. But if you want to stay at the top for a long time, going up to 40 years old, like Ryan, in the Premiership is just ridiculous in the European Cups.
But I mean, without delving too far into the nuances of it all, with Giggsy, was it, I mean, we all heard about the yoga with Rio and but surely genetics must play a role in his longevity as well, to last up at the elite level until you're 40.
Yeah.
I mean, what specifically did you do with Ryan? You mentioned that you did exercises to build the muscle and what have you, but was the stretching you did with him as well?
Well, of course,
all manner of things?
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. Strength training, basically, to give him some base to work from. But then you've got to do your flexibility, you've got to do your power exercises, you know, your agility exercise. You've got to work everything together. You've got to splice it together to make it work. It's not just about strengthening the hamstring. you know, the whole lot has got to be strengthened and maintained and stretched and worked in various ways, which we did. He just spent hours and hours and hours on working on the things that were going to get him right.
Fantastic.
And he just kept them things going.
Yeah.
And he started with yoga. Well, I mean, I brought the yoga into Manchester United, actually.
Yeah.
But then I sourced a proper yoga teacher, because there's certain lads, especially Ryan, who had the mentality to think you get a lot out of pure yoga, because I'd done yoga, but I use yoga techniques just like boxing techniques for flexibility.
Yeah.
And then there's certain people like Roy did it. Ryan, Gary Neville tried for a short while. Various people, because sometimes you get these clashes of personalities. Yeah. But yeah, you know, and they used the yoga teacher probably for about 18 months, Louise. And then she moved on, and they brought the new girl in. I can't remember her name now.
She's still at the club now.
Yeah,
doing
absolutely fabulous stuff. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it was yoga. You know, she's looked at yoga type training and also flexibility, but you know, gone a little deeper into it. Yeah. But it's basically stretching and flexibility, and you know, that sort of work. Regarding
the Giggsy book, does he attribute? You say that obviously he references you in the book in terms of your contribution to helping. So does he effectively attribute overcoming a lot of the issues to the work that you did with him? I know you seem like a modest man, but...
Well, I mean, I've only read it today,
yeah.
believe it or not, because a lad came in, like I say, he saw that picture,
yeah.
Then he brought the book in, and wow, flipping heck, you know, so I read it, and, you know, I went on courses, I went watching people, how they train, what they do to overcome certain things, and brought them in, and we set up this programme, and it worked very well. And one of the things was going really deep into the flexibility, and then bringing in a yoga teacher that then went on to the other girl. I do apologise, I can't remember her name. It was a really top-class girl.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic, obviously, that he acknowledges it in the book.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
On behalf of all United fans as well, I'd like to thank you personally for...
just doing my job, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, but, you know, for extending his career for several years, because obviously we saw the fruits of your labour. But a question then about... We'll move on to Cristiano, and he came to the club, and I wouldn't say he was slender. You could always see he had a physique, but obviously it's something that was progressively worked on.
The lad turns up, I just watched him, and you just think, man with a mission. What is the mission? Ryan Giggs. I've got to be better than him. And Ryan has always been interested in new ideas, trying different methods, and what Ronaldo did was exactly the same thing. He's seen how to be successful, but then he's ramped it up. And go. The important thing is the work that he did on his own. He does it in training, then what does he do? He takes that skill into which match? The big match at the top? Not a chance. The easy match. Get used to it in front of a big crowd, all the TV cameras, all the rest of it. Develop it there. When I've done that, we'll step up a level. And then, at the end, he developed them skills at such an high level that he could play anywhere in the world, and that's why he's worth so much money. But he had to take the knocks. And the bravery was, get beat, make mistakes, so what? I'm in the development stage. He came with that desire before he ever met me. A lot of people attribute this to this and that to that, but, you know, he had a mentality that I'm going to go in there and look and work with the best players, some of the best players in the world, and find out what they're doing, because I want to be the best in the world. That was his whole aim, is to be the best in the world, right from day one, right from the first time I spoke to him. Yeah. That's what it was about. And he's asking me, can I help him? Yeah. And I said, oh, I'll do the best I can, you know, like I do with everybody. And of course, the important thing is he looked at what everybody else was doing, and then he said to me, I want to be doing the stuff that they're doing, but I also want my own stuff as well. Yeah. And so we worked on lots of ideas for his training, and he was just so far ahead. I mean, at the time, Ryan was the one who was working the most out of everybody. Yeah. You know, apart from when people are injured, you know, like Ole Gunnar, what a worker he was, you know. Yeah. He had them injuries over the years, and just amazing. You know, Alan Smith, when he, you know, got injured, you know, the way he trained. Fantastic. But it's not just when they're injured. It's when you're fit, and you've got to be careful sometimes with your training to make sure on Saturday or on Wednesday when you play a game that you're at top end. Yeah. So you've got to be very careful with blending training in, you know, for somebody like that. And especially when they're younger coming through, because he was only 18.
Yeah.
You know, so we spent a lot of time looking at what you should do and what you shouldn't do and making sure things were right. And, you know, I'd like to think that we did all right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Was there an element with Cristiano where you almost had to kick him out the gym at times? You know, you're in boxing, there's I think they call them gym rats, and literally trainers have to chuck them out the gym.
Yeah.
Was he a bit like that?
A little bit like that, yeah. He was obsessive. He's totally obsessive.
Yeah.
He's an obsessive person. That's why he's got so far.
Yeah.
Because he's totally obsessed with what he wants to do in his life.
Yeah.
You know, and I can only say if everybody put as much time and effort into him, the standards of football in the world would be right up there.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a big divide between really top line and the lower lads. And they've got to realise, you know, it's about putting time and effort into your sport. Yeah. You know, they want the glory without putting the glory in.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah. And I mean, when I spoke to Gillen, one thing that stuck out to me is he said he believes Cristiano has peaked, which I thought was a controversial statement. But he said obviously he'll still score bags of goals, but he believes he's peaked. You mentioned there you believe, you know, Cristiano could essentially emulate Ryan in terms of his longevity. Absolutely. Do you think he can, because of the foundations he's put into working on his body and everything in his 20s and late teens, that he could go on to his late 30s? If
he's still training the way he did when he was with me, absolutely. So apart from injury, if you get smashed and you know you have a really bad injury, something like that, then that can cut it down. But I don't think he's had the problems that like Ryan had. Right. In the early days, he's not really had them problems. He's had a few niggles and everything, but essentially his physique is absolutely phenomenal. It was when he left, you know, to go to Real Madrid, and it looks like, you know, every time I see him that it's the same, if not progressed. Well, it'll have progressed quite a lot. Yeah. And I'm sure that unless he gets injuries or loses desire, he doesn't look like the type of person to lose desire to me. No. So he could go on if he wanted to, and possibly even, you know, what happens is the roles change in what you're doing. You know, as you age, you realise you see more, you understand more about what's going on, and you can change as you know, as your body changes. You know, power element compared with strength element or whatever, you can change your role. And you can actually become a better player than you was before, doing something different. And that's the possibility with Cristiano. To me, is he can adapt and do really well.
What sort of play? I mean, I know in terms of his evolution as purely as a footballer, he went from being a sort of explosive winger, and now we know he's basically a goal-scoring machine striker. How do you think his game could evolve? Because obviously with Giggsy, we know he went from a flying winger to essentially quite a cultured left-sided midfielder or central midfielder towards the latter part of his career. How could Cristiano, with his body type and everything,
well, I'm damn sure that he could end up in midfield and being a central, pivotal point for everybody to work off, because his fitness levels are phenomenal. Yeah. You know, and that's one of the things that you don't necessarily lose at, you know, cardiorespiratory fitness. You tend to lose the agility and speed and stuff like that. But because you've learned from all these top class games how to read what's going on, and especially the speed of the ball and other players, you can then visually see what's going on better. I mean, I always remember Rio, the way he used to read the game, not in how people play. Reading the game is about how fast the ball is coming, how fast that guy is going down there and he's going in there. It's reading speeds, distances, and getting in the right place at the right time. Now, Rio did it so well. Certainly while I was there. I've not seen many games since then because I've just been so busy. But I would assume that Cristiano will be watching all this, and if he needs to step back from scoring goals or being on the wing or whatever, he could very easily slip into a role in midfield. That's the way I see it, you know, because he's got so much experience now at the top level. So, and
just one question that I neglected to ask before regarding Giggsy. Aside from all the physical stuff he did with him, was it as simple as I don't know if this was a bit of a myth going around at the time, but apparently he changed from a sports car to a Range Rover or something, and that contributed. Was that a factor?
Yeah, seats are a real factor with sportsmen. You know, because...
Was this something that you'd researched and read?
No, not me. No, it was our physios.
Right.
Yeah, our physios had gone to a lot of trouble in lots of ways with Ryan. You know, we were a team working together. You know, I was doing physical exercises, you know, with strength and power in the gym, but they were doing all sorts of physio treatments and, you know, making sure things like beds and there's a big thing about beds at Carrington at one time, and we had a bed company in, and they started the other thing. It was fantastic because you learn so much.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose on Cristiano, another thing that I'd like to ask is, and I think I know your answer on this one, but do you think there's a chance we ever might see him back in Manchester, at United, hopefully?
Well, I mean, I can't say that. I just know that when I was working with him, in my view, the way he came over, this is his apprenticeship, he wanted to play at Real Madrid, that was the team he supported, and so ultimately he had a goal, and the goal was Real Madrid. Now, if that's changed, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and all players could move on to different things, you know, for different reasons. So there's always the possibility.
Yeah. And has he ever, because it sounds like you cultivated a very good rapport with him, has he ever been in contact subsequent to leaving Manchester and just to say hello?
Well, yeah, you know, we occasionally text at first, but I mean, they get involved with so many different people. I mean, you know, my best mate, if you like, was Alan Smith. I don't speak to him now. You know, he's got his own life, he does things. You know, you move from one team to the other. You can't take all phone numbers and be texting everybody. Imagine players, or like me as a coach. I used to coach 75 people at United, and each year you get some coming in, some going out. You know, it'd be ridiculous. So I'm not the type of person who'll go running, you know, and texting and mithering anyway. You know, I'm just not that type.
Yeah. So, right. Yeah. But every now and then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. Very nice.